There are 4 ways to apply glaze. Gee, this sounds like a list. One is just to dip things. One is to pour over things. One is to brush. And I count sponging as a form of brushing. You can just take a load of glaze and put it in one place. That's really excellent, particularly for the underglazes, if you just have a little bit of glaze and you want to put it in a specific place. Brushing is really good for that. Brushing is not really good to get an even coat of glaze all over everything, especially on the inside of things. You could spend the rest of your life brushing in different directions on a bowl and still not get an even coat. The 4th method of applying glaze is to spray. And people do all kinds of fancy airbrush kinds of things with glaze guns. It's an excellent way to mimic atmospheric effects. It's an excellent way to glaze something really big if you only have a little bit of glaze. The downside of spraying glaze, though, is that you make it airborne. And glaze, just like clay, is made up of finely powdered rocks. And when those finely powdered rocks become airborne and you breathe them, those powdered rocks stay in your lungs for the rest of your life. If we aren't careful, potters can get a disease called silicosis, which is right next door to the black lung that coal miners get. It's no fun. I personally want to live until I get hit by a bus. I do not want to die slowly from not being able to breathe. And because this is a 1-room classroom, and if we did any glaze spraying in here, even if we had a spray booth, the dust would get in the air and everybody in the room would be breathing it. So I have decided that here at Little Old Santa Fe, where you're just getting an introduction anyway, and there are so many opportunities to brush and dip and pour, that we don't need to spray glaze here at Santa Fe. But if you really are interested in ceramics, you should go to UF because they have fancy, high-tech, negative pressure spray equipment, and you can go to town. We good? So I have 3 things here that came out of the most recent bisque kiln, and these are things that I made in class. I also brought a cup over here to remind me to tell you. I made those test tiles in good faith to show you an example of what the glazes look like fired. But sometimes you don't get as much information as you really need on a little sample. Sometimes you can tell more on a real thing. So I also have that whole cupboard full of examples on the shelf under the flag over there. If you see something there that you really admire and you want to know what it is, ask me, because I kept them there because they're examples of things. This cup is an example of variegated blue on top of glossy black, and I think it's dramatic, and I think it's pretty cool. And the inside shows you what the variegated blue looks like running into honey butter a little bit. And like I said, I personally am entranced with these special effects you get from melting glass under the influence of gravity in the kiln. And speaking for myself, I understand that combination better when I'm looking at it on a pot than I do when I'm looking at it on one corner of a tile over here. So that's why I brought that up. Also, so I could have a drink of water. So I want to show you dipping and pouring today. That's enough. And I thought I'd start with the very first pot we made in this class, the pinch pot. And I'm willing to take requests. What color glaze should I put on this pinch pot? You get to say. What do you want to see? Wormstone? Any competing suggestions? Warm stone it is then. So all of these shop glazes are in big buckets. The names of the glazes are under the tile, and they're also on the lids and the buckets. The lids are labeled because you can see it easier. So let's look. Warm stone is over here. I found it by the label on the lid. But just to be safe, I'm going to check and make sure the bucket says the same thing. If it should happen that the lid and the bucket do not agree, which one should you believe? Yes, because the lids can move around. All these shop glazes are recipes of powdered rocks mixed with water. All of them are in suspension, not in solution. When we pick glaze ingredients, we choose things that don't dissolve in water. That means that every second of every day, gravity is pulling all those powdered rocks to the bottom of the bucket. And when you hear, if you're close enough, you can see when something hasn't been used for a while and you take the lid off, you're going to see clear water on top of what's in the bucket. You need to stir glaze before you use it every time. No exceptions. That strange bag thing that we were using for a phone resonator, that came from hand building last semester, and I kept it around as an example of what you get if you don't stir the glaze bucket. She thought she was putting tea dust on this, and it looked to her like she had coated everything, but she hadn't stirred the glaze. So only in one part of it was the glaze thick enough to do like it's supposed to. And the rest of the pot is not what she had in mind. Now, none of these glazes have anything in them that will hurt you through your skin. And I believe that this is the best stirring tool ever created by the Divine Absolute, because when you use your hand to stir, you can feel if there's lumps in there, and you can break them up with your fingers. You can feel if there's a layer of sedimentary rock at the bottom of the bucket. You can use your hand like a little propeller and stir the good stuff up from the bottom of the bucket. You can also use your whole hand and arm as a thickness gauge. If I were to quit stirring right now, you see, my arm is wet up to here, but it's not really coated with glaze yet. The coating is down here. This is what we're looking for. This is the good stuff. So I'm going to stir some more and do the propeller with my hand. If you have really sensitive skin and this stuff dries you out and bothers you, you might be able to find like elbow length rubber gloves, or you might be able to get a friend to stir it up the first time so it's really well stirred up, and then in 5 or 10 minutes, if you want to use it again, we do have some sticks to use to stir with. But sticks do not do a good enough job the first time of the day stirring up glazes. Now, when I pull my arm out, I can see that it's stirred up pretty uniformly. My whole arm is coated. And I can also use this as a thickness gauge in the sense that I can see my arm hair, and I can see the veins and tendons on the back of my hand and the wrinkles on my knuckles. I can see where my cuticles are. Yet, I'm not really seeing the color of my skin showing through the glaze that much. As a general rule, that's a pretty good thickness. If you pull your hand out after stirring, and it looks like pudding, and you can see where your hand just was in the bucket, or you pull your hand out and it looks like you're wearing kid gloves, you can't see your knuckle wrinkles very well, it's probably too thick and you need to add some water. I leave this out as the water carrier it makes sense to add water a little at a time. I mean, if it's a whole big full bucket and it's too thick, you could add a lot of water. But you add it a little bit at a time and stir and take a look at your hand and see what you think. If you have stirred up something and you can really see the color of your skin at your wrinkles, that means the glaze in the bucket may be kind of thin. You might want to dip your thing and leave it in longer, or maybe even dip it twice to get enough glaze on your pot. I like to have my own bucket of water and sponge handy when I'm glazing. I think your life will be easier if you do that too, just because the sinks can be bottlenecks. And you might not want to have to stand in line to wait to rinse out your sponge. Anyway, I've stirred up the glaze. Hanging up here by the side of the sink, we have calipers for something else, but these are called glaze tongs. And you'll see the points are at 90 degrees. They don't meet. That makes them a pretty good tool for grabbing pots across the wall. You get a really good grip on your thing if you do like that. I can move that around. I've got a good grip. There are pots that are a wrong shape to be gripped with the tongs. Sometimes you just have to use your fingers and grab it however you can. But for a one dip pot in and out, this is a great way to hang on to it. I'm just taking it, it's kind of sideways. I'm putting it down under the glaze, 1, 2, pulling it out. Let the drip, let the extra drip roll around the rim. What happens is the bisque is still porous, it's absorbent, it's sucking up all the water. And when I first pull the pot out of there, it's very shiny. You know it's wet, but within seconds, okay, maybe a minute, it becomes matte. It's not shiny anymore, and as soon as that's true, you can touch it. What just happened is the pot absorbed the water and left that coating of powdered rock stuck to the surface. And you can just put your thing down on the counter and let go of the handle of the tongs and take the tongs away, rinse them off. I'm not quite done though, because wherever your pot sits on the counter, it's going to have to sit on the kiln shelf. And there cannot be glaze between the pot and the kiln shelf, because when the glaze melts, it'll fuse. And we'll have to use a chisel and maybe, we want to be able to just easily pick your pot up off the kiln shelf when it's been fired. So what I like to recommend you do is first just knock it off with a knife. You do that over a bucket of water. That is a good way to start because it breaks the surface of the glaze, and you can even tell, I'm going to have to wash off the middle of the bottom too because it sags down, and it too would hit the shelf. And the knife is a good gauge to tell me that. I can see, oh yeah, the middle of the bottom needs to be wiped. And after I've scraped it with a knife, then I wipe it with a damp sponge. And you can definitely see where the glaze is and where it's not because of that ever so charming Barbie pink color that the pot is showing through. I like to wipe it off with a little margin for error. Warmstone doesn't move much in the kiln, but other glazes do. If you've put something runny on here, you want to give yourself room for it to run. So if that was all I was going to do and I'm all done, then I would take this pot out to the kiln room and put it on the shelf where it says ready to be glaze fired. But because I'm a thrill seeker, I think I want to dip the rim in something else just to see how it reacts with Warmstone, just because I want to know. We don't have warm stone and everything else in the glaze array. We don't have spodumene and everything else in the glaze array. But we do have other things with warm stone. Eggnog with warm stone on top is not that exciting. Oatmeal, same. Honey butter could be. Honey butter is like the special sauce. It activates a lot of glazes and makes them more exciting. And it's also runny, so if you want to add a little dash of special sauce honey butter, if you do, you're safer to do it at the very top rim. So that's what I think I'll do. I'm going to dip the very top rim in honey butter just to see what happens. And when we get our glaze firing out, you get to see what happens too. I'm stirring the honey butter. That looks like a pretty good coating. I'm just going to grab this by the foot with my fingers and hold it at the angle that the rim seems to be and dip just the rim. And that's my thrill-seeking excitement for this pot. It's a really, really good idea for you to write down what glazes you put on things in what order. Because you think you'll remember, but time will go by as we accumulate a load of pots to fire. And things change drastically when they get fired. And when we unload a whole load of new pots, it might be just breathtakingly gorgeous, and your friends will want to know what you did. And you will want to be able to say, oh, that's X, Y, and Z. Or it might be a really bad mistake. And your friends will want to know what that was too, so they won't do that. And it's to everybody's advantage if you keep track of what glazes you put on what. So that's dipping. Now we've dipped. One more thing I want to show you before we call it a day. Oftentimes, you might really like to have something be one glaze on the inside and something else on the outside. So let's glaze this pot that I made just last week. Speaking for myself, experience has taught me that I like the inside of cups to be shiny and a light color because you can see what you're drinking and you can also tell if the cup is clean or not. So I'm thinking about putting honey butter on the inside. It's a light color, it's shiny, but it's warm. It's not just like sterile white. You okay with that? Now you need to be thinking about what you want me to do on the outside, but I'm going to show you how to do the inside first. If you're going to do a different glaze on the inside and the outside, you should almost always glaze the inside first, and I'll show you why. We got a free case of very handy plastic cups from the Harn Museum. And I like using them. They're very helpful. We like to have plastic cups to drink from, to dip with and pour and use for slip and whatnot. But it's necessary for me to tell you out loud, on camera, with my mouth, this is not a product recommendation. It's just a plastic cup. I'm going to stir that glaze up again because it's been a minute. This is honey butter. I'm going to wash my hand off. I've got my coffee cup in one hand, my plastic cup in another, filling the plastic cup up with glaze, and here comes the pouring part. Pouring that into my coffee cup, it doesn't fill it up all the way. I hope you can see or imagine what I'm doing. I'm pouring it back into the bucket and turning the cup at the same time. And this is a skill you can practice. Get all the way around, and you have a nice even coat all the way around the inside. Quick and easy and even. It would not be possible to do that same even job with a brush. Just not going to happen. I'm wiping up my wet mess right here. The reason it's important to do the inside first is there's always going to be drips and splashes from where you poured it back out. And you want to be able to just wipe those off and not have it be a big deal. If I had just spent lots of time and care decorating the outside and then remembered, oh yeah, I got to glaze the inside, and a big old drip went across it that was not according to plan, I might be unhappy. And as it is, sometimes you'll like your drips, but I am deciding that I want to wipe those drips off the handle. And now I'd like to solicit suggestions about what glaze to put on the outside of this cup. What would you like to see?
Can we see tomato red?
Sure. Tomato red is one of those glazes that I have learned from experience is better a little bit on the thin side. So I'll stir it up and gauge it by my hand, but I will make it a quicker dip. You don't want to leave it in long enough to 1, 2, 3, 4. You want to go in and out. Tomato red also, I know from experience, doesn't really overlap real well with anything else. So if we put tomato red on the outside of this cup, maybe tomato red and then some glossy black, because that'll be a red-black combination, kind of reminiscent of, okay, yes, Greek pots, red and black. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time or effort trying to get that honey butter out of that little crease. If I wanted to, or if this was your pot and you wanted to get that out of there for sure, your knife can reach in that space and scrape, and you can get residual glaze out of there. So I'm going to let this sit and stir up the red glaze, the tomato red. Sometimes you make a mistake or you change your mind. You can always scrape the glaze off into the trash and then scrub it with a sponge and water to wash it off so that you can start over. But if you do that, your pot is very likely to be saturated with water. So just put it on your shelf and let it dry out for a day. Because our glazes depend on you starting out with a dry piece of bisque that can absorb some water. And if your pot is saturated with water, another coat won't stick right. The only answer is to let it dry for a day. Tomato red, right here. I'm making sure my hand is clean enough. And here we go. Tomato red and tea dust are the two glazes I topped off Summer A. So this is a very full bucket. So I not only have some stirring to do, I have to do it a little bit gently so it doesn't splash out onto the floor. Tomato red and tea dust and glossy black are the glazes we use that have enough iron oxide in them to stain your clothes. Iron oxide is the same thing that makes bloodstains stain. Not that you need to be afraid of that, just don't come in here with your in your confirmation dress and start glazing pots. And I'm deciding that that's not a bad thickness for tomato red. And I'm going to hold this pot upside down by the foot and give it a quick dip. Right in and out. And I'm going to say a little prayer. Tomato red, please be the right thickness to be red. It's a really good idea to put the lids back on buckets when you're done, especially if you're working with other people around, because it's just so easy to splash or to have a cup of something and pour it in the wrong bucket. Say, imagine somebody's got half a cup of lapis blue, and somebody has been working with the white, and the lapis gets dumped in the white. It's not white anymore. Same thing if you're using a stirring stick. Wash it off before you use it and after you use it. Here's the glossy black. And to look at it in the bucket or look at it on my hand, it looks an awful lot like tomato red or tea dust, doesn't it? You just have to believe what the bucket says. There's a certain amount of taking it on faith. And it's looking a little thin. So I'm going to leave the pot in there for a count of 3. One, 2, 3, okay, 4, 5, 6. Did that all make sense to you? Now there is nothing more I can say. It's just time for you to, sometime this week, get brave and glaze your first pots. I suggest your pinch pots because they're a little bit rough and a little bit small, and you know you can make that again, so you can be brave and just try something. Stir up a bucket of glaze and dunk your pinch pot. And then we'll all have skin in the game when we have a glaze firing pretty soon. Your test tiles are for later. Put them on your shelf and hang on to them. Okay? Thus endeth the lesson.